No, we do need it replaced.
Morning, Scott.
So we're live.
Welcome back.
Good morning, everyone. I'll call this meeting to order. It's 10 a.m. Monday, August 17th. It's the Committee of the Whole meeting of the Village Council of. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that our meeting today takes place on the traditional territory of the Stables. Are there any late items introduced this morning? Don't see any. I'll move to item 4 on our agenda, which is approval of the agenda.
So moved, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Faccio, seconded by Councillor Vital. Any discussion on the agenda? I'll call for the vote. All in favor, and our agenda is approved.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, is it possible to turn these speakers on so we can hear back here? We have a lot of speakers, mics. No?
I don't see a mic in front of me, so I
Is
don't
this on?
know.
Maybe this is on here. Tyler, can we get this on?
It's just for Zoom.
It's for Zoom.
That's for Zoom.
The meeting will try and enunciate and speak clearly
Thank you.
in the room. 5 on our agenda, item 5A. I'm going to turn this over to you, Director of Relations, I presume. And I think we'll be looking to our Director of Finance as well, and others as we go through this. Over to you.
Thank you. And good morning. So today I'll be presenting on the village's wastewater treatment plant and water treatment plant master plans. So these two plans are new to the village, and they're intended to be a long-term roadmap for managing our critical infrastructure. So the purpose of the master plans. The purpose of these master plans is really to look beyond our yearly operational needs and identify future priorities and requirements for these two plans. These plans help to ensure our water and wastewater facilities continue to provide reliable service to residents and businesses. And it also helps the village plan for future growth by understanding what additional capacity may be needed as population increases. Another benefit to having these plans is to strengthen our application when grants become available by showing that our infrastructure needs have been assessed and that they've been prioritized. So the procurement process. When we started this process, an RFIQ, so request for information and qualifications, was issued for preferred engineering firms to provide peer reviews and to assist the village in the procurement process for the actual master plans. So once we got to the point, a request for proposals or RFP was issued as a competitive process, and then we went through evaluation based on cost and qualifications, and we ended up with a consultant firm called McElhaney who specializes in this type of work, and they were awarded both projects to start the process.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
When did the RFIQ, when was that issued?
The RFIQ was,
You know,
it was about 2.5 years ago, I believe, is when that first got issued. And then the RFP was, I can't remember, that was early last year, I believe, somewhere around then. So it is a long process to get to this stage. So diving into the wastewater treatment plant. So the wastewater treatment plant master plan included a review of the plant's infrastructure, the treatment processes, operations, performance, regulatory requirements, and also future flow projections. Through the study, opportunities were identified to improve the system's resiliency, to address infrastructure aging, reduce operational challenges, and then also prepare for the future needs of the plant. This created a list of recommended projects that were categorized into short, medium, and long-term projects. So with these long-term, short-term, medium projects, there's some key recommendations that kind of came out of this. So some of these key recommendations, they sort of fit between some specific themes. Mm-hmm. So the first theme that we kind of look at is what came about from the sanitary sewer master plan that was previously presented, and our I&I, which is also inflow and infiltration that we have. So this is groundwater entering the sanitary sewer system. Once this water that's into the system makes its way to the treatment plant, it can increase operating costs, impacts the availability to the treatment capacity of the plant, and it's just one of the things that we are looking at reducing. Next is to look at increasing capacity and redundancy to improve the system's reliability and also to support future growth as well. Another recommendation is to advance permits and regulatory updates so that they better reflect our current operations and any planned infrastructure improvements. Long-term asset management is also addressed as a key theme. This is just to look at some of these projects that are going to be aging and when replacement will have to happen and how we budget properly for it. So this is a little small here, but this is from the master plan, kind of one of the key pages, and really summarizes what some of these projects look like. So this sheet here shows the short-term 0 to 5 years, medium term 5 to 10 years, and long term 10 to 20 years, and categorizes the projects. Some have engineering allowances, so staff know to start looking at the engineering side earlier before we get to the capital costs. There's also a check mark for DCC eligibility, so if we can apply DCCs towards the funding of the projects. And then also it's set up with kind of annual operating projects, and then some that we should maybe look at as grant opportunities as well, as some come available. So I won't talk about every single project, but I'll highlight some of the main ones here, more in the short terms. There's the ones we'll be looking at, and then kind of address the bigger, longer term ones. So like an example would be S3. Which is updating the municipal wastewater regulation permit for compliance. This is during high rain events and future capacity. This is something staff have already started initiating the process on. Next, there's a lot of minor repairs and upgrade projects that have been identified in the short term. We have S9, that's a new centrifuge and equipment. This is an aging piece of equipment that's used to separate water from wastewater solids. There's S11, which is the addition of a third membrane cassette. The plant currently has 2 of these membranes already, which they sort of act as large filters, and they set our capacity amount. When the plant was designed, it was designed in a way so we could accommodate a third membrane as capacity was needed, so it's something to start looking into. We have S12, which is related to asset management, so budgeting for replacement of these 2 MBR cassettes. There's larger infrastructure items that have high values, so to look at when we start looking at replacements for them. And then we also have some projects identified as grant opportunities like L1, which would add twin force mains along the wastewater treatment plant access road. So this is something that's currently being investigated during the dike upgrade project. And how it could integrate potentially with that as well. Some long-term projects have also been identified for staff to start investigating in more detail in the long term and start being prepared for as well.
Mayor Talent.
Sorry, question. Sorry, through you to Jace. Thank you, Jace. It was a great read, and after every section, they would highlight recommendations. So do these recommendations in the report here translate exactly to what you've got here? All the recommendations, we haven't skipped any or missed any?
Yes, so this is like a high-level summary of all those ones, and then that's what the related S1, S3, S4 would all be, and they would go into the project in more detail throughout the master.
So you've adopted all the recommendations?
These, yeah, this is the high-level spreadsheet, so we can see kind of what they all are.
Perfect.
All are.
Thank you.
Councilor Batchor.
Another question. I'm missing that one sheet.
Oh, and the
I only have the water one. Oh, thank you. Thanks.
We'll keep going. I know we're going to be circling back to this on many points, but we'll let Jace go through the rest of this slide.
Sure. So we'll shift over now to the water treatment plant. We have an image here. It's on Hot Springs Road. Probably a lot of people drive by every year and don't really realize what the actual infrastructure is, but it's yeah. So the water treatment plant master plan, it reviews the village's water supply, treatment process, storage, and our pumping infrastructure. The study found that our system is operating for the community as it's needed, but it identifies components that will require upgrades in the future to maintain the current level of operations and also to accommodate demand as we move through. A review was completed of the system capacity and prioritized improvement projects along with targeted timelines for them as well. So some of the key recommendations now of this master plan is to increase treatment and distribution capacity over time, again, as future demand grows and is required. So these are recommendations on strategic improvements to maintain our current level of treatment and to enhance resiliency and protection of this critical infrastructure. So similar to the wastewater treatment plant master plan, a phased capital plan was created to support the long-term asset management and capital projects as well. So this would be a similar sheet to the last one that I presented. And categorizes projects into work plans in the short term, medium, and long term as well. So some of these work plans are dependent on others to be completed. And one of the largest costs in the short term category is to construct a new building or create a building extension, just to allow more space for some of these future expansions as needed. So by doing this, this would allow the long-term need of a third UV treatment train and having space for a fourth pump and room for additional equipment also as this demand increases. There's also recommendations here on work plans for some electrical upgrades and future studies as well to be done. Another project identifies grant opportunity here is work plan 1. It's another one as a grant opportunity because we're looking at it as part of the dike upgrade project and how that can integrate as well with the raising of the flood protection. We'll move over to some budgeting discussions and our 2026 opening balances. So this slide shows our 2026, our water reserve, sewer reserve, and our wastewater treatment plant reserve. It also has our 2026 budgeted contributions, so showing what we'd be contributing into these reserves each year. As this may change as well as things change and increases. We also have DCCs at the bottom here, which has our drainage DCCs, parks, but it also has water and sewer. So they can be added to some of these projects in the categories that were DCC eligible. So while budgeting for projects, staff will be working through these, our current amounts, how much is being contributed, and then also looking for grant opportunities. That's something the village has been really successful in the past and has provided a lot of our large infrastructure upgrades. So the implementation strategy. So this is really how staff are going to be using these master plans. As I mentioned, it'll be for grant opportunities. We are always on the look for grants that come available that can support some of these projects now that they've been identified, and we can use them in the application process. They'll be used as to help guide developments, to know what capacities are available. And then it'll also be used to update our asset management priorities and strategies as well for some of our larger capital investments and replacements. And then also we want to look towards developing a 5-year capital plan based on the master plan recommendations. This would combine all of these recent master plans together, so we have a good idea of our large infrastructure investments over the next 5 years. So diving a little more into this 5-year capital plan. So council's priorities was to focus on master planning, and this has now been complete. So the next step would be to create a 5-year capital plan, to define all these recommendations and come up with how our funding will look over the next 5 years. So to start this process, engagement could happen with the community during the annual budget process, get feedback on prioritizing these large infrastructure projects. The goal with this would be to create and adopt a plan early in 2027 so that projects could start in that budget year cycle. So now before I get to the recommendations, I also want to highlight the amazing work our utility staff do here in the village at running our treatment plants and really just bringing a high level of service to the community. The team that put a lot of work into the operations of these plants and have also helped to shape these master plans. So with that, the recommendations of this presentation are that council adopt the water and wastewater treatment plant master plans, and that staff prepare a 5-year capital plan incorporating village master plan recommendations and community input for council consideration and approval.
So moved, your worship.
Moved by Councillor Pacho, is there a second to that motion? Councillor Jackson. I know the
Committee of the whole need a second.
Pardon me?
Committee of the whole need a second.
All right, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Jackson, you can't do this. I'm certain there's tons of comments. Before we start, I got a couple just to make sure I understand the recommendations that have been moved. What does it mean to adopt these master plans?
It would be the same as the other ones. There's not a commitment to any funding or doing these projects, but just to adopt them, saying that they're now something that staff will be working with and using to help guide some of our recommendations that will be coming to council in upcoming budget cycles.
So adopting the plan is not the same as approving all the recommendations?
No.
Okay. Okay, we're clear on that. So we understand the motion in front of us. We're not.
We're not adopting all these costs. They would be coming to council at each budget cycle for adoption. At that point, these are just recommendations. A lot of them are some of the engineering. Staff will start looking into them to see if these are the right projects or maybe different ways on how we can.
And we use the adopt language in the same way for the previous 3 master plans we looked at earlier this year. Okay, good. Open the floor to comment, questions, reactions. Councillor Patrick.
Yeah, just one comment regarding the water side of it. I noticed there was some comments on the master from Mac Haney regarding at some point the resort may connect. That's maybe anticipation. They may be years down the road because they already get their water themselves with it. They actually went into the lake before we did. And the other thing, was there any consideration given, I didn't see it in the plan here, regarding to extending the water to those homes who are still on wells in the village?
Go ahead.
Through you, yes. So on your first question, when Michael Haney assessed it, there's been no discussions or talk about the resort coming onto the villages, but it's just more in long-term future planning if that was to ever happen or be an ask, just so we'd be prepared to kind of understand how that could work and integrate. And then with the water down the homes, as well their own wells, that was addressed in the water master plan that was previously came through council, and that does have a project recommendation of that with a cost estimate as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Jackson, I saw your hand first.
Thank you, Worship. Just a comment. I've gone through everything and I think I understand most of it. Well, I guess what I see the positive side is when I see the numbers presented here in both cases from the water plant and the wastewater plant, I'm really pleased because it really doesn't amount to a huge amount of money. So what it tells me is we have maintained our two essential services really well. And we're not going to be hit, that we know of, anything really catastrophic. That really pleases me when I see these numbers. And hats off to all of our staff that has managed to do this over the years. The plan laid out, I think, over the next 4, 5, 10 years will work really well. And I fully support it. Thank you, Your Worship.
I had a similar observation from a little different, came at it from slightly different point of view. I know our last 3 master plans used language of deficiencies and those kind of things and risk analysis. I don't see that kind of terminology in here, and particularly when I read the water treatment plant, it looks like, to me, it's running well. There's no risk, and much of what is in these reports is making strategic decisions now in anticipation of increased demand, future growth, or upgrades as the requirement goes, and just enhancing resilience. I noticed the electrical and other types of things there, so that's positive. On the wastewater treatment plant, I did note the discussion, and I think it's something we should probably talk about. I know some discussion online about using the District of Kent's wastewater treatment facilities and abandoning or reclaiming one on the shore of the lake here. When were those decisions made to go that way? I know there's probably councillors here that were on council because I'd love to understand, and I think it might help everyone, refreshing memories, or perhaps even a report from staff, sort of the factors that went into informing that decision when that was made, whenever it was made, because I know it predates all these reports. And with that kind of question, that is a legitimate question. Councillor Faccio, you probably know, I think you probably know something. I think I saw your name on the wastewater treatment plant building somewhere there, opening it.
Well, that did 212, we opened that, but in 208, we got the 3.13 million, well, it was 400,000 towards the new treatment plant. And I think we had to add another $1 million out of our reserves to complete the plan. But there was discussion at that time between Kent and Harrison, and not just the wastewater line, but the water from the lake would go to Kent. But part of the discussion was that the federal prison had to come online as well to make this work, because they had their own treatment plant, I believe, there. So, but the costs were astronomical, of course, because of the lines. I mean, what is it, 7 kilometers to Agassiz, or 6, whatever the case may be. Plus, you would have maybe purchased farmland as well to get these lines in. And then the costs that we were originally given, I believe, was 90 cents per cubic meter, went up to $1.05 or $1.10 from the District of Kent. So we said goodbye at that point and stayed with our own plant and situation. So that was basically the story as far as that discussion in this report, that we did have conversations with Kent regarding our wastewater and water going to Kent. But so that's obviously didn't come about. We were happy to extend the water line into the lake, and of course eventually build our own water plant here, to which I believe is like you just pointed out, excellent water that we have in Harrison. So basically that's the Councillor Jackson may have a bit more to add to that. I'm not sure.
Councillor Jackson, anything?
Yeah,
just to help us understand the context.
It's
20,
not,
15, 20 years ago.
when they approached us, it started out like it could be a feasible situation. But then, of course, they changed CAOs and everything changed after that. The bottom line is that they wanted us to pay for their new treatment plant. If we were gonna take our wastewater to them, then we had to pay for it. And all the numbers now, it just made it not feasible whatsoever even to do it. Which was one of the best decisions we ever made right in Harrison at that particular time, because what you don't want is you never want to be holding to another community for one of your major services, because then you can be held up at any particular time. And that was, the reasoning, I know it sort of was my reasoning behind, no, we're not gonna do this.
Thanks for sharing that episode. Sounds like it was a financial consideration and some autonomy as
Yeah.
well for the village and control that goes with it. Interesting.
And at that time also, we had an old wooden water tower here.
Right.
It was leaked. I don't think it's ever been cleaned in its lifetime. So we were faced also with this new water tower. So we had to borrow $1.5 million, 50, something like that, to put it in there, which is now roughly 950,000 liters, I believe. So all those had to be combined at the same time. But it's all paid for.
I know, and looking at all these master plans, looking ahead, and I was reading articles in the media about North Vancouver and those areas, looking at by 2030 having just the bill per house for, if I read it right, for just treating wastewater coming out to $1,300 a year, just for treating the wastewater. Wow. So obviously lots of decisions were made back in the day to keep things much more affordable here.
Well, the idea was, then your worship, was to look to the future for the village.
Yeah.
With the reservoir, the new water plant, and of course extending the water to the lake, because we only had that one well on the Coombs where the community garden is.
Right. Councillor Swinburne.
Yeah, Mayor Tom, thank you. Councillor Fasher mentioned some dollars per cubic meter cost that District of Kent wanted back then. Do we know how much it cost us in the interim years? Did it prove to be cost effective for us? What is our cost per, or do we know what our cost per cubic meter to treat is for the wastewater treatment plant? Sorry.
CFO, it's probably something having just seen my utility bill in the last week or two.
Yeah.
Probably putting you on the spot, I'm sorry. The premise was that it was more cost effective to keep it in-house and keep using the wastewater treatment plant and upgrade it at the time in 2009, and I support that. That was the right decision to make at the time. Where I'm going with this is an inflection point that we have an opportunity to decide, do we keep investing in that, or do we look at the feasibility of another option? When you can go down a rabbit hole and look at different options that other municipalities have done, and there's countless municipalities that have teamed with area municipalities for wastewater treatment. In Southern Alberta, there's 13 regions that came together to make one. There's lots of regional examples. If I could get into this, Mayor Talon, Annacis Island, they control the wastewater for Burnaby and for Richmond and a bunch of different communities. Maple Ridge and Pitt Meadows, they send theirs under the Fraser River, 1.5 kilometers to a plant in Langley. The James Street plant in Abbotsford, they handle Missions effluent, again, under the river to the Abbotsford side. And in fact, even Sumas, Washington sends their waste to that location. Victoria just finished theirs. They combined Esquimalt, View Royal, Langford, Colbert, and the First Nations there into one big plant. So there's countless examples of municipalities getting together and forming a partnership. And I just think this should be part of the discussion before we go and commit lots of money to the wastewater treatment plant. Is there some way to revive the idea of 2008? And I don't want to look back, I want to look forward. I meet lots of young people in this community, all reasonable people who love our services. So thankful that we have a wastewater treatment plant and understand that it's state of the art, but most reasonable people understand that it could be in a better location. And these decisions were made 100 years ago. We get that. 100 years, it has nothing to do with us, even council, long time ago. But, I did a tour of the site a few weeks ago with Tyler, and that could be one of the nicest places on our shoreline. It's west facing, you get the sun in the morning and the early afternoon. If it wasn't there, honestly, that would be a great, great place. So I just want to make sure before we commit to this plan and all this money that we maybe look at tying in either with the new facility that the Kent and Mountain facility has made, because it's state of the art, or with Kent or with somebody else. It's money, it's engineering, but it's also vision. And if we, we're supposed to be visionaries, and if we can look forward and ahead where there's nothing on that waterfront, and we can clean it up, decommission that site. There's many examples of Canada where this is done. I would just like to consider that and make that part of the conversation before we commit all this dollars to that plant. So my original question was, are we efficient? Because if, when municipalities get together and do these kinds of things, the cost efficiencies can be improved, environmental efficiencies can be improved, and we can maybe maintain and improve services. We're not sure. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Schweinbens. Appreciate Councillor Faccio and Jackson's recollections. I don't know if anything material has changed, but I think council might benefit from perhaps a report from staff that sort of presents what was presented to council back when those decisions were made to upgrade the wastewater treatment plant where it is now. Knowing that this work took 2.5 years, and there are things particularly on the wastewater treatment side in the detailed report that suggest deferring decisions for that kind of time is probably not in the long-term interest of the village. But I think perhaps a starting point might be to have a report for council's consideration, just summarizing the factors already mentioned by Councillor Faccio and Jackson that helped inform council back when those decisions were made.
Sorry, I'm coming a little bit late to the party, but I just want to speak to a couple of things that Councillor Swinebens was speaking to. I believe that this wastewater treatment plant that we have here in Harrison is positioned quite well to support future growth. The last expansion that was done, I think it was 2016 when the last upgrade was done. 2016.
Wastewater treatment plant?
Yeah.
It was opened in 2012.
Okay, so back in 2012. It still has one more location to be able to put another train in. So that'll allow us to treat more effluent, to be able to discharge more if we can, and if we're successful in increasing our discharge permit, of course. On top of that, the wastewater treatment plant in the district of Kent is seeing capacity challenges as well. So for us to partner there might be a bit of a challenge because their partnership right now is with Seabird Island. So the amount of growth they've seen on Seabird Island is eating up a lot of capacity there. I don't know what their long-term capital plan is for the wastewater treatment plant, if they're planning on expanding it or if they're going to upgrade or anything like that. So to focus, in my opinion, it's up to council. If council wants to direct staff to look at, an engine report to kind of provide an update of what the synopsis was back then versus what the advantage is today, we can certainly go that route. But I still think that this wastewater treatment plant is positioned in a way that we can still support a fair amount of growth still, and I don't see the need to explore the partnership with Kent. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Thank you, CEO Cook. I think a report for council would be just helpful to understand the factors and issues, and the information that helped inform that council decision of that day. And then maybe with that report, it'll be clear if there's material changes to the situation today. I see a whole range of hands, so I'm going to start with Councillor Thatcher and I'll go down the line.
Just following on the CEO's comments, Your Worship is absolutely correct. Kent, Chilliwack and Abbotsford, maybe Chilliwack, maybe in emergency. So the biggest problem on the regional district, like Victoria areas, is because they're all on septic tanks, is where does their waste go to? So Kent won't take it. Chilliwack won't take it unless it's a real emergency for maybe another one, and Abbotsford won't take it. So I cannot see that that Agassiz would be able to take everything from here back to what it was back in 2008, whatever it was. I don't think that. I mean, we do get rid of our sludge in Kent, I believe.
Yes.
That's taken there.
Not the sludge, the bio,
yeah.
Refined solids.
Yeah, biosolids, sorry, to Kent. So that's and we're fortunate to do that because a lot of others are not accepting that. So it's I agree with your report if you want to follow back on the difference, but I don't think the days of what we discussed then, I think, have gone in regards to with our growth and the growth now that's happening in Agassiz, that they would be able, unless their whole plant was totally expanded, which would cost millions nowadays. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Councillor Bond.
Thank you. Mayor Tallon, a few questions. The master plan refers to the resort and the holiday park. In the past, have either one of them approached the village to hook into those utilities?
Go ahead.
Not from my understanding. From my time I've been here, we've not had any interactions with that.
if I may, the hotel, we did speak to them within the last few years, because they were seeing some challenges with their water treatment system. But that's kind of fell off the wayside. Holiday Park, I believe they're happy with what they've with their water right now. But if they were to want to, the main is there, and we could explore those options.
So nothing formal?
Nothing to date.
Okay, thank you. What funding opportunities would be available through both the provincial and federal programs, and which of the recommended higher level projects would be eligible?
So there are some grant opportunities that we're looking at through the dike upgrade project, because they're directly related, like upgrading the wastewater treatment plant road. It's something we want to try and do some of this work when that's happening, just so we don't have to come back and redo work that's already been done. So sometimes we can maximize certain grants to be able to include different aspects or at least portions of it. And then I believe there's been some other infrastructure grants that come available consistently through the province and federal government. A lot of it for building resiliency has been a recent thing that's been going on. So some of these projects can fit under that. We did recently apply for one grant, a federal grant, based on some of these master plan recommendations as well. So they kind of consistently come up year after year.
I know that not often, but grant applications can be oversubscribed, right? So, and we don't have any control over that or what other levels of government approve for the grant funding, right? So further to that then, what portion of any costs could we recover through DCCs, user fees, or other means rather than property taxation?
Yeah, so with DCCs, as long as the project is targeted on growth, then DCCs can be applied towards it. So typically there's a calculation percentage of the amount based on the project. So it's once we work through the engineering, get cost estimates on the projects, we work with the engineers on a percentage of how much DCCs could be applied. So with our DCC funds that we currently have in some of those, we'd be looking at using that for some of these specific projects and maximizing it as we can.
And can the DCC supplement any successful grants?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay, couple more questions, Mayor Tallon. How do the master plans, if they do, address things like climate change, extreme rainfall or drought, flooding, any wildfire, or say extended power outages beyond sort of like our control?
Go ahead, I think I read bits in there over the weekend, but.
Yeah, for sure. So the master plans identify these projects. A lot of it, as I kind of previously mentioned, on resiliency, because really we want to look at, as issues come up, how we can properly manage it. An example would be as climate change, like level rising, how that impacts the planet. So really just building on projects that can help keep everything safe if a major event happened, different electrical upgrades, providing protection in terms of power outages. And then a lot of it then comes down to how we see these plans and our staff work on them to build resiliency and generators, and how we kind of put it all together to make sure that if an event happens, how we can keep our infrastructure operating.
Thank you.
And Councillor Vital, I believe the dike project includes enhanced resiliency from flooding from the lake for the wastewater treatment plant.
That's correct.
That's part of the question.
And access to.
Yes.
Yeah, and access.
Because I remember on the previous terms, during the atmospheric river, it almost got to the point where that road was flooded out to the wastewater treatment plant. And I believe that one of the considerations was actually getting over to the wastewater treatment plant via boat. So thankfully that never happened, right? But and one further question, Mayor Tallon. How has our seasonal tourism and, peak period water consumption been incorporated into the master plans? And are our visitors and other seasonal users, are they contributing any share of the costs associated with additional capacity required to service that peak demand?
Operation.
Yeah, so looking at that, there's kind of two ends on the wastewater side. Our peak demand is more in the off season with the I&I and the inflow of water into the system. On the other end, the water is, as you mentioned, more during the peak tourism time with higher demands and as lawn watering happens, which can be offset by different restrictions. So yeah, and then also there's been recent discussions on RMI on how these impacts could be supplemented by funds here, but that's, I believe, still an ongoing discussion.
Okay. And I know we started that I&I project after the last major rainstorm. So have we made progress on that?
Certainly, yeah, we were able to target some key areas. Of course, the water table was much higher and we were able to, and trust me, Tyler was very motivated, so, because he's had these challenges for quite some time, so he was able to tick quite a few boxes with respect to that, and of course, as the water table dropped, and of course, you don't know where your challenges are, but we were able to make some fairly good headway.
Good.
One thing I did want to say about the peak demand and consumption. So when we see people occupying hotels, using our washrooms, I mean, hotels we can recover through our service fees. Not so much the main hotel because they have their own water, but through their wastewater discharge, both water and wastewater discharge through the other hotels that are connected. Now, of course, people coming and using the waterfront with beach washrooms, that's those costs will be covered through the pay parking. So long and short is that essentially everybody that's using water or wastewater here is in some way or another is contributing to the overall cost of.
Good to know. Thank you, Mayor Tallon. I think that's it for now.
Okay. Councillor Schweinbach, next on.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to be able to comment on some of the things that were said about a vision of the actual place of where this wastewater treatment plant is. And, you know, make no mistake, I appreciate what staff have done. I think it's a state-of-the-art facility. I have full confidence that what we're discharging into the lake is super, super clean. My only comment is, you know, I hike over to the point every week. We take our mountain bikes over there. We kayak. We paddle by that plant several times a week. And everybody, reasonable people say it's too bad it's there. And we all have to admit it's too bad it's there. It's too bad we don't have a bare lot somewhere where we could put that plant somewhere else. And again, that decision was made 100 years ago. But we are making a generational decision to invest in a plant. And I just want, before we do that, I don't want to look back at 2008 and 2009. I don't want to point fingers. I want to look at the future and do a feasibility study, even a quick one, to see what it would take to connect for the two communities to come together and to use that wastewater treatment plant facility that Kent has. Of course, we would probably have to double its size. Of course, we would have to put a line down to Kent. Of course, it would be tens of millions of dollars. But I think it's worth looking into for future generations who could repatriate that large footprint on the waterfront, which would be a fantastic asset, I think, for the community. And I think we ought to look at that. Again, so I'm not sure, I know you've directed staff to do a report for us. I'm not interested in looking back, I'm interested in looking forward. And the reality is, guys, the political situation and administrative situation, both here and in Kent, is going to change in just a few months. And we could have some fruitful discussions about what we can do in shared water services and wastewater services. And I'm loath to approve the plan today until we have those discussions. That's my general comment. So I don't know, do you need a motion for me to direct staff to, or is that sufficient staff?
We have a motion right now on the floor to adopt plans, and then once that's dealt with, I'm going to move to get a report from staff that would help understand the factors that inform the decisions to have the wastewater plant where it is at that time. And I'm hoping that report will also highlight if there are material changes in the circumstances that might cause a reconsideration.
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity. I think District of Kent has some challenges ahead of them with finances with regards to the pool. Maybe they need an upgrade on their wastewater treatment plant. Maybe if the two of us put our minds together, we can solve a bunch of problems here. And that's the kind of high level thinking I'd like to do. And again, the political and administrative situation is going to change in a few months. I think we should wait. I think also the public should have an opportunity to really digest this before we adopt anything. I'm not sure what we're voting on today. If adoption means we're accepting all this, I think the public ought to have some input on this first.
So I believe there's two recommendations that are form part of the motion right now, and we did clarify adopting doesn't mean approving all the recommendations, just like in the other three master plans. We adopted those, and that and seek community input. So there's lots of questions there. So that's a two-part motion right now. One is to get community input. And I clarified with staff that adopting doesn't mean approving all the recommendations.
But Mayor Town, if I could just challenge that premise, if we adopt something, then the bulk of it is going to be started to work on. I think we should get more input and some more information first.
Okay.
So I don't understand the difference between adoption and approval of all this stuff. Maybe we can clarify that. Thank you.
Sure. I looked to see a couple.
I noticed Councillor Jackson had a question before I speak.
I don't know, really have a question, but I have a comment.
Yeah.
When Doug Ford was reelected, he got on this idea of putting all kinds of municipalities together. And it was this great plan that costs would come down and efficiencies would go up. Well, the exact opposite has happened. It doesn't work. And to think that we would even think of moving our wastewater plant from here to Agassiz, the cost would be so prohibitive. Nobody could live here. I mean, we have a great report. We should adopt this report and let the staff do their job in coming forward with the next recommendations on it. We can't reinvent the wheel here. Just think about it. Just think the idea of trying to get a pipe approved, to get anything approved right now. We're waiting for the dike to, environmental report. How long has that been? I mean, come on, we're going on a tangent here that I don't think it's a rabbit hole. I don't think you want to go down, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I think my recommendation to council would be is that we move forward. Obviously you're totally entitled to vote whichever way you would like, but I would recommend that we move forward with these two motions. And if they're adopted, it doesn't set anything in stone. What it does, it gives us a vision for the future. If we pause now, because there's been a lot of time, effort, funds put into these master plans, and if council's happy with them, we can adopt them as they are today, but certainly we can still look at what your concern is and see if there's a viable option outside of what these master plans considered. Because we're now into August, and if we're going to be, we're getting to the point where this is going to get put on to the next council anyway. So if this gets adopted today, that'll give staff some direction. We can look at in the fall here, wrapping it into our 5-year master plan or 5-year financial plan for the next council when they come in to adopt. And this isn't a sprint. This is a marathon with these types of master plan projects. And something else to keep in mind too is that it will, if we are applying for grant funding that could support some of these low-hanging fruit or even major projects, that could hinder our ability because we don't have a current master plan. Our master plans that we currently have in place are outdated. This is current. This gives us today's numbers, and we're able to move forward.
If I may, Mayor Town, that kind of speaks to what I'm saying. Is once it's adopted, the train has left the tracks, if you will, and I just feel like my idea should be given some consideration. And I'm not so sure that we're there. I'm not so sure we've given clear enough direction to staff. And maybe there's no agreements around the table. And I'm not suggesting a political integration with District of Kent, just a technical one. And this happens dozens of times across British Columbia, including very local examples where they share wastewater treatment plants. And, so that my grandkids can walk down to the point and down to the beach without having a big lagoon of effluent there. And I think that's worthy at least to look into before we adopt these plans.
I'll move a question on the motion, Your Worship.
Yeah, there's a whole lot there. I know Councillor Pache, your hand is up. I think, I know your comments, Councillor Swinman, are premised on that there is a better way that should be explored. I'd need to understand the factors that informed council's decisions back in whenever it was, when decisions were made to pursue the current arrangements with the wastewater treatment plant on the shore where it is today. And then hopefully that will outline, at least give us some information about the factors in front of council at that time when they made that decision. And perhaps staff can also turn their minds to if any of the things have materially changed that would perhaps suggest a reconsideration. Councillor Patchen, you're entering.
Just one quick point with respect to Councillor Schweinben's comments. I think the overall plan is referring to, and the long range plan in discussions with other municipalities or whatever the case would be, or another location. I think that's for a new council to do a strategic planning session to deal with that in a much different way, where you would have more time for the staff to get their figures down. I mean, there would have to be conversations. Just for the example, with say the district of Kent, what it would cost to expand your existing water plant. What would be the difference from the tax rate for the residents in Harrison today, and what would be the difference in, say, 10 years' time in the tax rate? It might be so astronomical that we'll forget about it, but it may not. But I think that's for a strategic planning meeting. Here, we're just looking, and like the CAO says, attached to this plan, this recommendation, and once the staff come back with a more concise, is like, there's could be grant funding here that what we might have an opportunity to apply for now. If we hold this back any further, well, then we have to wait another year or 2 years to get to apply for these grants. I think this is just a start here, the recommendation, a 5-year plan, and I think that's the way to go. And what Councillor Schweinbenz comes up with, I'm not saying it should not be done, but I think that needs to be done with another, what's it now, 8 weeks, we have an election. And that should be for a new council to have a strategic retreat to deal with looking at this much bigger scale of the whole situation, whether it moves from the lake or not. And like Councillor Jackson said, call the question, Your Worship.
I have one more technical question though.
Sure, go ahead.
If I could, sorry for Jace, if I could. I can't remember which page it was on in the report. It was mentioned by operations staff that as the lake was coming up, the lagoon was coming up as well, which means that there's I assume it means there's some ingress coming from the lake or from the water table into the lagoon. Could you not then assume that there's some egress out of the lagoon also? And this is where I'm speaking to, once we start making these big investments, we might find out some stuff that are very concerning. Once we remove the sludge and do I think we have to bisect the lagoon, if I remember correctly, to create redundancy. We might find something we don't want to find. You have a technical comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, these are just,
You don't know until you know.
yeah, we have to dive into the engineering aspect of it, really start looking into and seeing what best options are available. So, once we move into the engineering side and really understand it, then we'll know better to have better informed decisions.
Have we ever tested the water in the lake around the lagoon site for contaminants from potential egress out of the lagoon?
We test the water right
Egress or-
here at the beach. We don't do anything, as far as I know, around the wastewater treatment plant, but if there was influence or anything, because the winds at times will flow, like during the summer, we do it, of course, right? It would be pretty evident that there was an issue. I mean, we have the floating water park out there. We're not hearing of anybody, being sick or being infected or anything, and there's no evidence, as far as I know, in the water that would indicate that there's anything leaching.
That was concerning though, as part of the read, because if it's coming up with the water, with the lake and going down with the lake, that's a bit concerning.
We'll call the question on the motion. that information. All in
Oh,
favor?
sorry, Mayor Town, one more thing.
The
Have we
question's
committed
been
to?
called. He's called the question.
I'll call the question, yeah, on the motion, which is, as stated on the plan here, so. Two-part motion was moved by, is that correct, Corporate Officer? Two-part motion was called. Thank you. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Opposed, the motion carries. I do have a couple of follow-up motions I would like, as our discussion led. CEO Cook, comment?
Once we're done this conversation about the wastewater, or sorry, the master plans, I'd like to provide an update with what happened this morning.
Okay. I'd like to put a motion forward that staff prepare a report on the factors that have helped to inform a council decision back whenever it was that led to the wastewater treatment plant in its current place, and an assessment if any of those factors have materially changed. I'd like to.
I'll second that, Mayor Town.
I don't think we need seconders in the committee of the whole,
yeah, right.
but I appreciate your enthusiasm. Any discussion on that motion? Councillor Swinburne.
Thanks, Mayor Town. I just wanted to be clear here that we would engage at least at a higher level with the District of Kent on this and to ask some of the questions, including technical and engineering questions, to see what capacity they might have and what political will there might be. Again, things are going to change in 3 or 4 months, to Councillor Fasho's point. So I just want to make sure that you mean for them to not only look back, but look forward in a meaningful way.
I wanted to understand the factors that helped them to inform the council decision of the day, and an assessment from staff if any of those factors have materially changed, which I think would involve understanding if anything has changed based on the assumptions or the factors that helped inform that decision. Any other discussion on that motion? I'll call the vote then. All in favor of that motion, and that carries. I think more information is always better than less information. Mm-hmm. I do have another follow-up one, and that's a follow-up. I know we just moved and accepted to prepare a 5-year capital plan, and I think that's helpful. I'm going to add something else, and I'm not sure it's in the capital plan, because capital plan is simply budgets for 5 years and the types of projects associated with it. 2 things. I know these reports, and I understand why it's there. All the capital costs have a 40% contingency, which is significant. And I understand why it's there, because you don't have to, you just read the news and see the changes from the approved budget to the final cost of any number of projects dealing with water treatment and wastewater treatment. I want to make sure, it's my view that the water treatment, all our municipal infrastructure for treating and managing water, wastewater, and storm sewer, and the storm water, that it comes in sort of that the amount we charge for utilities covers those costs. So it's on a user pay basis, and that it's not coming out of general village reserves or the tax base as such. So part of my question, this would be a challenge for our financial officer, chief financial officer, is if we do a capital plan, I'd like to understand if our rates that we're charging for water, sewer are in line with meeting the capital plan. And if adjustments need to be made to the rates we're charging for water and sewer today in order to have the 2 ends meet, if you will. Part of me looks at this, these are large numbers, and when I look at the reserves don't cover all of this, and I know there's DCC funding and potentially grant funding, but I'm really focusing on the rates we're charging for water and sewer, with some information about the likelihood of DCC eligibility, grant funding success, to make sure we're charging enough for water and sewer today to meet the expectations, not only going up 5 years, but also if you can looking ahead to 10 years. I know we recently increased the rates 8% in 2025, and another increase of 8% in 2026.
26, 27.
26, 27, thank you. And that's a pretty big increase, but our reserves, I see the contributions to reserves as a basis on that is it's on the presentation, several $100,000 a year for each of them. I'd like some advice and recommendations if we're charging enough in light of what staff might recommend for a capital plan for 5 years. And my view personally is a modest increase today might be much easier for the village as a whole and taxpayers and users, and the taxpayers actually users of our systems, and I've seen the nightmares of 30 and 50% increases because something happened and community was caught a little flat-footed. So I'd like part of that is to move to make sure that we have a financial analysis to ensure that our rates for water and sewer line up with whatever staff is going to recommend on the capital plan. So I'd like to move to that as well. We don't need a seconder.
Yeah.
Well, that's a long motion, and I think our corporate officer, if you could, I'm sure you'll be able to summarize it. I just want to make sure that the rates we're charging for water and sewer are sufficient to meet the reserves expectations, needs, demands for whatever comes forward in the capital plan.
Sorry, so for the motion, Mayor Talon.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you directing staff to just report back, or, okay, so we're requesting a report back from staff for like an analysis of utility rates?
Ideally, when the 5-year capital plan comes with it, I'd like to see a 5-year user revenue, the revenue plan as well, to show where the money's coming from, because I don't want any council looking at let's spend this amount of money and not know how it's going to be paid for. Any comments, Councillor Vital?
Thank you, Mayor Talon. I'll be supporting your motion. I would also include it to see sort of like a breakdown if we were to increase utility rates by, say, 5%, 8%, 10%, how that would reflect on taxes. Is that possible?
CFO, is there a sensitivity analysis possible?
Yeah, that's understood, and that's no problem to do. We can do some different scenarios. And just making a point, I think all of council knows our utilities are self-supporting, so they're not supported in any way by property taxation. So obviously that's the goal, to keep it that way. So for sure, we can come together with them.
Councillor Schweiman.
Well, thank you, Mayor Talon. I have 2 comments. First is my wife and I own a secondary property in Cultus Lake, and the utilities here are about half of what they are in Cultus. So I think we're getting good value, and there's probably room to move if we need to spend more money. The other question I had, maybe for engineer Jace, is on page 24, and that speaks to what you're talking about with the demand, the peak demand. It seems like on just a handful of days every year, we have this peak demand that's much, much higher than average. And further to what you're saying is, can we see if staff can price that peak demand in a way that discourages high use of water by individuals or businesses, so that we don't have these peaks. I mean, we're spending millions of dollars really to manage these peaks. And if we can, through conservation or through water pricing, manage these peaks better to reduce them, maybe we don't have to spend all this money.
Good luck. I'll look to staff to comments on that.
That's something that, say, BC Hydro can do, because they have, it's an electronic, essentially real-time data that and of course they would have done an analysis. I think if you're looking at trying to financially take advantage of people during their peak time, I think that's going to create quite a challenge. And I say from a technical perspective, but also from a community perspective, having a base rate is a little bit easier for people to understand and accept. But certainly we can, that sounds like a little bit more of a deep dive than anything I think that Mayor Talon is suggesting. And then not to mention, if we're gonna have to, we're gonna have to implement more technology, which is gonna increase our costs, right?
Yeah.
So,
On that, Tyson, do we have, we don't have smart meters, smart water meters?
no.
That's
we
not a
do-
thing?
No, a lot of the larger communities do, because then they just have, their collection is essentially in a vehicle. All you have to do is drive through a neighborhood and collects it. Whereas here with ours, it's a meter that, you put a reader on top. So it's much easier for us to do here.
So we do have it. We do have, sorry, I'm not.
It's not remote reader. Like, for instance, you can read there is a puck on top on some of them that gives us, or you can pop the lid and see the meter itself.
So what would it take to start measuring, to putting in water meters so that every household pays for what they use, to Mayor Talon's point, pay for what you use?
Yeah, it's the challenge with installing water meters on unmetered properties right now is it's very, very expensive. And then there's a discussion, do you put it in the boulevard or do you put it in the house? And you can speak to as many people as you'd like, you're gonna get different opinions. My preference, of course, is to have it in the boulevard, because then it's in our right of way. Our utilities members can access it right away. There's no risk of tampering. Whereas once it's into a property, into a house, then you need to get permission to enter the property, enter the house, and you're going into people's private spaces. And then also there's a chance for people to tamper with it.
So if I may, so we don't have this technology, or I'm not understanding. What
So some of our properties do have
Right, okay.
meters, yes. Not all.
What about the business community?
I wouldn't
have
be able to
meters?
do that without, perhaps Scott might know, I'm not sure.
Like, you know where I'm going, guys.
Yeah.
We need to be able to charge for people to use, and then when we have that data, we can charge for these peaks and avoid these peaks and avoid this big expense. That's kind of where I'm going. Do we have that technical ability at this point?
We
the
don't
answer
have
is no.
that part, yes, no, we do not have that technology.
That's too bad, because I think we're spending to these really handful of days that we have peaks. And this is on the wastewater treatment side too, where we get these big peaks and valleys.
Councilor Pancho.
Just quickly on that, I'm guessing from 2000 or 2003, all new homes had water meters. I've got one in my house on the yard. Tap for one day. When I say, well, like the CO2, one day that the whole village will have meters, and that's the only way you'd be able to regulate the usage, is what you're referring to.
Yeah.
But that's way down the road, that sort of thing. I think the only one that you can measure is a commercial. Am I correct? They're charged by cubic meter. Am I correct? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. James.
Just one quick thing to add to that on our water master plan that we previously presented. One of the projects there was a study on universal water metering. So that is something that's on that master plan to explore the possibility of what the cost would be to implement that.
Thank you, James.
And have we looked at, Mayor Town, have we looked at conservation? Restricting watering. I think some communities, they stop watering altogether, June 1st type of thing. Like, is there anything we can do for conservation? Yeah, okay, that is, okay. Are there more things that we could look at?
I know even is watering your garden or sprinklers on the lawn Tuesday and Saturday, and odd numbered houses are Wednesday and I don't want to say, I don't know.
I believe that
200
up till now, we have followed the regional district recommendations. Is that correct?
Yeah, and City of Chilliwack, it's kind of so Metro Vancouver, Fraser Valley Regional District, so the other municipalities all have their own water conservation bylaws. We have a policy that triggers, I believe it's June 1st to September something 1st, maybe, I'm not sure, maybe August 1st or October 1st, and we are enforcing if we do see someone watering outside of their allotted time, so we will allow officer more time.
So the motion, I know we've gone a long way away from the motion, maybe directly, but lots of important indirect and related conversation. But the motion was to ensure staff, part of the 5-year capital plan also includes a revenue assessment and assessment of weather and a sensitivity analysis on our rates that we charge for water and sewer to make sure they line up with what will be the cost of whatever's in the capital plan on these things. I'll call a vote on that motion. All in favor? Great. Thank you, staff, in advance for, I'm sure, what will be an interesting project. So note the time is 11:15. I want to suggest a quick 10-minute break and then come back.
Maritime, or sorry, are we leaving this topic then?
Yeah.
Yes.
Unless there's another motion on it, but I
I
feel a need to just pause it now. We can then come back.
Can we come back?
Yeah. So we'll be adjourned until 11:25 for those online or in the room here.
So
Put a magnet beside it.
Yeah,
no,
It's best
Yeah.
before
Actually,
Yeah,
that's how we're
Lunch at 12, do we?
Yeah.
Starving.
Water.
Everyone gets engaged.
Yes, great.
Yeah, job one and job two for the village.
Yeah.
Gets everyone's attention.
10,000.
Yeah, peak periods.
Yes. Cost them.
See, Dawson agrees.
Yeah, you have to have service agreements.
Yeah. Wow, I'm sure that's.
Yeah.
That's up.
Yeah.
I see the time is 11:25. And I will call our meeting back to order. Councillor Swinebens, you had.
Oh, Mayor Talon, just a question for you.
Yeah.
Not a technical one, I can assure you.
Well, then, I don't know if I can answer technical questions. So your question.
Public input.
Yes.
You know, for the dike, we had great success in getting the public out for 2 or 3 or 4 meetings. And this is the same scope. I would like us to see the public involved, and be able to have some input to their priorities, their ideas, maybe in their vision for the future, whatever it may be. So does staff have an idea of what they'd like to do for open houses, or any plan, or do we wait till after the election for this? I'm open to
Any
any.
ideas? I look to CAO.
Yeah, so our
on,
budget-
how we'll engage.
During the budget process, we have our open house. Certainly, I mean, we're always willing to take input from the residents if they want to email council, if they want to email staff, certainly. Like once these master plans get put on our website, it'll probably just looking down the table here, we'll be add them to our website, and is it going to be on Get Into It or anything like that? Or is it, so there'll be opportunities there.
Well,
Get into it, Harrison.
Yes, that's right.
yeah, but I mean, can we have a formalized engagement process where they have input? And I know, I think what you're saying to me is they have to be active in this. I want them to, maybe there should be some kind of a poll or a question or period, or maybe even an open house on this.
I think we.
This is a big deal.
I think when we get to a 5-year capital plan, that is the response, I guess, collectively by the village to the 5 master plans we have in front of us right now. I think there's probably an opportunity when we get that report with recommendations from staff, and whether it's 1 or 2 options, including the financial impacts and all those things. Yeah, I'm certain there will be opportunities for public engagement when we get that report. But at this point, it's difficult, I think, to gauge the scope or plan until we actually have those reports.
Yeah, that's true, and there are so many technical elements with respect to all of these, and like if you're talking about the dike, it's one project. We're all able to get a head around exactly what we're doing, what we're talking about. If you're talking about master plans for the water, sewer, and storm, that could be a week's worth of. So we're looking for. Like I said, we're going to put it on the website. It's going to be accessible. We can have copies available if people want them. And we're willing to take feedback. But ultimately, once it's into the 5-year capital plan and the next council approves what staff's vision is for the next 5 years to be able to fund some of these projects, then that's where, during the budget process, the community is going to be able, because we don't really know yet. Like I think what Mayor Talon is trying to indicate is that we haven't put it into that 5-year plan yet. Once that's laid out, certainly it'll be.
I would say though, respectfully, if I could, 2 things. I think once it gets to the budgetary process, then the technical elements are likely already decided upon. And number 2, this town is full of artists, but it's also full of techno geeks and engineering geeks who like this kind of stuff. They live with this stuff. They walk by it every single day. So I think a robust engagement process and open house should be done. That's my opinion.
I think when the council of the day receives the 5-year plan, I think they'll
Make
probably
that
talk
decision.
about how it is the community will be engaged. And it'll be a big plan, and as you mentioned, it does set the tone going ahead. So it would be good to hear from the village, because these are long-term plans and goes to sustainability and affordability of what council will be doing for the village. And hopefully it's responsible and sustainable decisions.
I think all of council supports the notion of public engagement on, you know, any topic really, or the major topics. But until we have something to present to residents, being the 5-year capital plan, I don't want to see us get ahead of ourselves. So I agree that let's get the 5-year capital plan established, and then council of the day can make a decision on how they want or see public engagement for it.
Yeah, and it's a 5, 10, 15 beyond plan. It's like because we're required legislatively to have our 5-year plan. That's where we'll get the bulk of our short-term investment into our infrastructure. But we want to build beyond that as well.
I think overall, your worship, our staff have done an absolutely outstanding job the past 2 years, or nearly 2 years, in relating to the public what actually is going on. I mean, Richard Harrison and the fun fact Fridays and the open houses we've had and all the information that's out there that people never had the opportunity to go into, you know, even young Katie sitting for 4 hours at the health centre every Friday, and unfortunately you get 2 people turn up, you know, but it's there for the public to, if they want information on those particular areas of concern. So I agree, we have to let the public be informed, but I think our staff have done an outstanding job of relating most of what's going on in the village to the public. Appreciate that. There's always room for open houses.
I agree.
Yes.
I mean, I agree with your comments.
All right, we're in agreement. We will engage the village when we have a plan in some way and hopefully hear back. 5B on our agenda, and I note the time is 11:32, is our planning consultant, Mr. Cossey. I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Standing presentation.
No podium. No, I'm fine, thanks. I've been sitting all morning. Again, we're gonna just talk briefly about the amenity cost charges. What we're doing, we're going back to basically the start of what the ACC program is all about. A lot of this has been repeated, but there were some questions and some comments that were raised the last time this came in front of council, and I figured we should go back and make sure that we're all on the same level as we move forward. So I apologize for repeating some of the earlier information. But as we all know, the amenity cost charges is a development financing tool. Similar to what the Laker DCCs, we'll talk about a comparison between the DCCs and the ACCs as we get through this process. But this legally replaced the community amenity contributions concept. So there was legislation that came into effect in 2023, Bill 46, which allowed the local governments to set up their ACCs. And the key word here is may implement. You're not required to, so this is a discretionary power of council.
And what if we didn't?
You just don't collect them.
You don't collect them. Okay.
Yep.
Do we have anything in place now?
We used to have the community amenity contributions concept, which was more of are you interested in doing this, Mr. and Mrs. Developer? And if they said yes, then we would negotiate. If they said no, then we would not do anything. So it was a one-off situation all the time. This, if we adopt the ACC bylaw, happens at either your subdivision stage or at your building permit stage. It's collected like your DCCs. So as I mentioned earlier, what's the difference between a development cost charge and an amenity cost charge? Your amenity cost charge is, to start off, you're looking at what amenities are attributed to the growth potential in your village. The development cost charges, they fund infrastructure and services like your roads, your sewers, your parks, your water, whatever you would like to get into. Now you can also get into your fire. And it's a very formal process. If you wanted to get your fire department involved, that's fine. But the whole DCC process is very formal. It has to be approved by the inspector of municipalities in Victoria, whereas the amenity cost charges do not have to be approved by the inspector of municipalities. DCCs, you do not need consultation. ACCs, you need community consultation. So there's three things that you're looking at. Is you're looking at amenities attributed to growth, like arts, your health facilities, your whatever it is that you can attribute to growth. The inspector of municipalities does not need to approve your ACC bylaw, and you have to have community consultation through your ACC process.
Go ahead. And just to confirm, we have a DCC bylaw already?
Yes, it's being updated.
In place, we're good.
It's quite old, but being updated. But until we get the new one in place, we're still using the old one. So what can the ACCs fund? They can't do everything. So if you're going to be looking at doing a new amenity, let's say you come up with a new concept, you're going to construct an amenity, whatever that may be. You're looking to expand an existing amenity. You have a partnership arrangement with a third party on some sort of offering an amenity. These things can happen, and you can do one-time capital costs for your ACCs, for your amenity issues only. So how do we calculate all of this process? It's not just because somebody stands up here and says, this is the numbers we're going to get at. The big driver that we're looking at is step number one. We're forecasting future development and population growth. Then we identify the projects that are attributed to this growth. You can't just say, oh, I want to do this, this, or this, and there's no factor, nothing that says that's going to cause or going to be a consequence of your growth. It has to be a direct relationship to the growth potential of your community. You're estimating the total capital costs because we need to shoot for a generalized target. This is just a highly educated guess, but this is what we do as professionals. We provide that type of information.
Thank you. Mr. Cossey, just while I think about it, I know you're speaking at item number one. How is that future development and population growth established? Is that through housing needs assessments, through census, through?
Yes, there's a formula we'll be talking about that we've gone through. It's through the housing needs report, and we look at the factor of how many potential houses are people can be living in those new houses, and then we do that estimate and we do some projections forward.
Great, thank you.
Excuse me. And then, as I was saying earlier, we just determine the proportion that's benefiting your future growth. We apply the municipal assist factor, and in this case, it's 1%. We allocate recoverable costs to the development types. And basically what you end up with is you can end up with a cost per unit of your residential development, or you can end up on a cost per square meter for your commercial development, which is a similar process as the DCCs.
Go ahead, Tom, sorry. And just on that point, cost per meter or cost per unit, are we competitive with other municipalities?
We'll show that a little bit later on.
Okay.
And we have to remember though, when we're looking at other municipalities that their costs are different. So it's not really a apple and apple comparison, it's an apple and an oranges concept.
Okay. Thank you.
So when we met last, I guess it was December 2025, we asked council through a similar exercise to identify a range of possible projects for consideration. And this is the list of the 7 items that were identified during that process. So then we took those 7 processes and we ran it through a filter, looking at how many of these were actually ACC eligible, what's the relationship to future growth, what's the capital nature of the project, how can we clearly define that X causes Y, there's a causal relationship, and then we also looked at the long-term community growth. So projects that had a strong relationship to growth and were clearly identified as ACC eligible, these were given the priority. So what were those ones we looked at? Well, that included your daycare facility, the potential, or whatever you want to call it, civic center hub, and healthcare capital contributions. You can see here on the growth rationale, how each of these amenities responds to your growth potential as you move forward. Yes.
What is this list represent? Is this our top 3 or?
No.
What are we doing?
This list came from.
Right, but where's tree canopy? Where's parks and
Okay.
trails?
When this all 7, not all 7 were associated directly, were at a higher rating with the ACC issue that went through this process, this screening.
So we've lost parks.
No, you haven't
and
lost them.
no.
They're just not in there at this particular point in time.
Well, I think they should be.
How were they screened out?
Yeah,
Clarify.
Yeah, it
What
was
the process to screen them out?
This is the process that we utilized.
This process comes from where?
The guide. The guidebook that the province put out.
I think, Mr. Cossey, you'll find that at least I am uncomfortable with all this because I just don't understand. I understand how this is supposed to be a charge on something, development in some way for future growth for these community type projects that aren't hard infrastructure like we were talking about earlier this morning. But all these screening, is this all in the legislation?
It's in their guidebook that they present.
And the guidebook is referred to by the legislation?
By the legislation, yes.
Okay, so we have to follow if we do it, we need to follow the legislation, including the guidebook that has these screening criteria in it. Okay, thank you.
And on that note, Mayor Town, so what you're saying is after today, like, do we not have a reserve for things like parks and trails and rec spaces and for emergency facilities, for trees and environmental?
Your parks and trail is already actually covered off by DCCs.
Like DCCs, okay.
Yes, and your tree canopy issue can be covered off by your environmental development permit, and you can make that a cost of the development.
And additional costs. I just don't know why, as an example, trees, canopies, and environmental improvements, we dropped. It's long
term. You haven't dropped it. It's already funded through another process.
Okay.
It doesn't meet the criteria
or the
ACC eligible projects. Is that? I'm just trying to understand.
Yes, that would be, it'd be very low priority and difficult. How are we going to, if we're going to do a tree canopy situation, how are we going to figure out the cost for all of that? We have to figure out how many trees we're going to put in, where we're going to be planting them all at. Whereas if you do it through the environmental development permit process, it becomes a site-specific developer is required to do it.
And sorry, Mayor Tom, do we have that process? That environmental development?
That's again a decision of council.
I'd like to see
that. Update that.
Yeah. Okay.
So
keep going. Okay. We may interrupt you again. But keep
no, please do. That's why we're here to doing this. So these are the ones that when we looked at out of those 7, that these 3 came to the top priority based upon that. Oh, don't peek.
And so the we in your sentence is who?
Myself and Tori.
Okay. And these are the ones that best fit the guidelines in the screening criteria.
Yes.
These are the ones that
These
through
are
all
the
that
ones
process.
came through
These are
that
the
process
top ones.
and
From that other list of 7.
yes, the 7 that you had. These are the ones that came to the top.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, we're done. No? No more questions. How come it goes forward so quickly but doesn't go back?
It's
There we go. So how do we figure out all of these future forecasts when we're dealing with it, as was asked earlier? Well, the first thing we look at is the housing needs report. In that report, if we all remember, because it's 200 or 637 new dwellings by 2041. So how many of these would be single family dwellings? How many of these would be medium density? We figured all of this out, and then we did some very general calculations, and we came up with a figure. Eventually by 2041, you would have 1,364 new residents inside the village. So when we're also looking at the commercial forecast routes, how much of this is going to be employer related? How much are new employees coming in? How much space per worker? These are just some generalized concepts that we were looking at, just so we can start looking at some figures. And we ended up coming up with a figure of 1,000 or 13,640 square meters of commercial floor space required to help service your population of what it's going to be in, by an educated guess, 2041. These are just targets that we're creating so that we can shoot for something.
And the housing need units, because this number gets interpreted multiple ways. This 637 total new units, that's the result of a formula that the province gave us that the University of BC developed to apply to every single community in BC.
Yes.
So it's a formula based on any number of factors, and that's the number that formula spit out for that we had to do
for Harrison,
because we were compelled to do this housing needs report for the province.
Yep.
Councillor Fine.
Thanks, Mayor Tom. The one thing that strikes out to me is 466 new low density units. And we don't have any more land to grow on. There's no room for single family homes here.
This is not a planning exercise.
Okay.
But I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
You gotta start thinking about this. You gotta remember this is 2041, so there's a lot of potential that has to be done and looked at as you're moving in if you wanna make it a planning exercise. This is a amenity cost charges exercise.
Mm-hmm.
These can, and actually the housing figures as we move forward are to be taken into direct consideration when you're creating your new OCP in 2028. And that's legislated by the province. That'll be 2028. So now we're looking at how do we come up with some of these capital costs? Well, when we're looking at a daycare facility, we're looking at $1.4 million, a civic hub center concept, $8.1 million, healthcare capital contributions, $125,000. The figure, the top two, they're very general figures that we do as professionals. We just get a rough idea. If you want to go from a type A, B, C, or D estimate, with the D being very broad and general, this is a class D estimate. Very broad, very general. However, the healthcare capital contributions is very specific because there seems to be a lot of municipalities that are doing this similar exercise, are putting in $125,000 to purchase equipment for a practitioner or a doctor's office to be upgraded, that sort of stuff. So that's what is currently trending out there. The latest one being is Gabriel Island, which I believe is looking at renovating the building or renovating an office, but they're spending $125,000 on their office equipment, doctor's equipment. So they can have a practitioner or a nurse practitioner or a doctor in their office. So this is what we were talking about earlier. What proportion can be recovered? And only the proportion of the amenity costs related to the future growth can be recovered through the ACCs. So remember what we said before, the existing population is 19,000 or 1,905. Got the decimals or the comma in the wrong spot. And the forecasted population based upon the housing needs is 1,300. And so your future population service for the village by 2041 would be approximately 3,200. So then we take the calculation to figure out how much is the benefit to growth. We take the future forecasted population, we divide it by the future service population, and we end up with a figure of 41.7%. And that this means 41.7% of the eligible capital costs that we mentioned earlier are attributed to future growth. So this would also meet the legislative requirements and the guideline requirements, because we're only attributing funding towards potential future growth. Yes?
I'm still here, Justin. It's okay.
Okay. So when we were looking at it, we had some estimates. So based upon those capital costs that we had earlier for the daycare, only 601,000 roughly is eligible for the ACC issue. And then assuming you get the 1% municipal assist factor, which kicks in, you can see that's what the $6,000 is. So the total recoverable costs for the daycare are $595,000, almost $596,000. But then you can see at the bottom down here, the total is 4.016 million for all of your ACC's growth related costs.
Sorry. What happens to the rest of the money then? So if we can only collect 41.7%, what happens to the other 50%?
That's because we're only allowed by the legislation and by the guideline to attribute whatever the growth is to that percentage, that 41.7%.
So if I collect,
so it's a benefit to go to the growth.
Right, but if I collect $100 in an ACC and only $42 can go to the daycare, what happens to the other $58? Is it stuck in a reserve until we find another eligible?
No. This is it's not funded at all, because you're only attributing 41.7% of those costs to the growth.
Okay, so the money's not collected for that.
Yes. Not at all.
So I think the key here is that it's 41% can be funded through. So you would be asking that for that much.
Okay.
Whatever that 41% is, and the other 58% would either be through grant funding or taxation.
Okay, got it.
Or other funding sources.
Okay.
You could only take 41% of that.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
So now we're looking at your allocation and your draft rates. So we've combined everything. When you look at it, daycare is attributed 100% to residential growth. Your city civic center hub concept, 80% residential, 20% commercial. Healthcare, 80% residential and 20% commercial. So you can see the figures below. Your residential recovery rate is 3.3 million, and your commercial recovery rate is 684,000. Because not everything's attributed to just because more people have moved in. There are some commercial activities also that have to be factored into this whole process, and this is what this does. So when we look at everything, the low density residential, we're looking at $5,300 roughly per unit. Medium density residential, $5,100 per unit. The high density is $4,600 roughly per unit. Your commercial rate is $50.16 per meter squared. That could be attributed to whenever a new development comes into town. So How does this compare with other? Well, when you look at the low density residential in Cumberland, again, we gotta remember that we're not really comparing the same costs here as we go along. You can see that they're looking at $9,035 per lot. For medium density, they're looking at $6,000 per lot. Their high density is $4,400. But you can also see that they're not charging commercial, they're not charging the industrial, they're not charging institutional. And their projects are looking at a recreation center expansion and a daycare facility. Just so that you can realize that they have different costs associated with it. And then the city of Courtenay, a little bit bigger, of course, a municipality, but they're looking at community and recreation facilities, sports fields, parks, and cultural facilities. And there you can get a rough idea of what their commercial and industrial or residential rates are all about. City of Mission, again, same breakdown, but the big thing is they're looking at a performing arts studio, civic space, recreation facilities, turf field, disc golf, and public art. So that's all of their costs. And they've made the decision not to put it towards the commercial, which is fine. And then the city of Pitt Meadows.
Do you know in Pitt Meadows, they do have environmental conservation there? Do you know what their example is?
No, I don't. But if I was there, I would tell them to take that out and put that into the DP area.
They need to hire you. Mayor Town, if I may, one other quick question. I'm not sure about our draft rates. I'm not sure that they encourage higher density development. All the other examples that you've got here, all the other communities seem to charge half or less than half for higher density residential units compared to the low density ones. So I think we need to encourage more transit friendly and more dense living. We have to here, I think.
These are the rates
on that.
These are suggested draft rates.
And I'm just wondering if public policy like this encourages the type of growth we want to see.
Again, that's a planning exercise, right? And we're looking at cost charges right now. But if you want to relate the two together, that comes into play with the new OCP write-up they can deal with in 2028.
You know what I mean, Marital? Like we need to encourage medium density residential development around here. That's really what we have. So yeah,
affordable housing is on top of many people's minds. I mean, the province has identified there's a housing crisis in the province, and that's why we were compelled to have a housing needs strategy in place, and all those reports that went with it that we considered earlier this year or late last year. I'll let Mr. I've got so many questions. I'll let Mr. Carson, is that the end of your presentation? I'll let you finish, because I think there's a good discussion to be had.
So if everybody's in agreement with what we've got, some of the things you have to start looking about is, do we want to do the ACCs across the entire village? Do you want to just pinpoint one area? You have that flexibility. We can collect it at either the subdivision stage or the building permit stage, similar to your development cost charges. We deposit the revenues into an ACC reserve fund. We complete an annual report that goes to the inspector of municipalities, and then as we also consult the public and the affected parties through this development of the new bylaw. So if the council's in agreement, we can either go back and start the ACC process again with additional or new candidate amenities input. We can look at refining the project costs. We can prepare the draft ACC, present the report and bylaw to council. We have complete the consultation, and then we proceed with bylaw adoption. So that's the process, is the ones under the next steps. So, and this is also, we're required by the guidelines and the legislation to follow the next steps process. That's ACC in a nutshell.
Thank you, Mr. Cossey.
That's amazing.
I noticed the time is noon. Just clicked over to noon. I'm gonna suggest, we're not gonna get through our agenda in a reasonable amount of time. But we take a lunch break at this point. Is that possible? Arrangements have been made for council and staff, and reconvene at 1 p.m.
Is it coming here?
I believe so. So we'll adjourn, not adjourn. We'll recess. Recess is the word I'm looking for until 1 p.m. and reconvene, and we'll pick this up. I'm glad we got through your presentation, Mr. Cossey, and we have lunch to ruminate on it and come up with our questions. Thank you.
Super, very good.
Cameras are on. We're good. Right,
Good sandwich.
all right, it's 1 p.m. and we'll reconvene our committee of the whole meeting, picking up on presentation on amenity cost charges. We have the presentation from Mr. Cossey. Any questions, comments?
If I may, just before, one thing I forgot to mention too, the ACC charges, like the development cost charges, is a one-time event. You can only charge it once.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Questions?
If you want to do it.
Thank you. Questions, comments? I'll go, Councilor Vital.
Thank you, and through you to Mr. Cossey. Can you explain a little bit more on the ACCs where public engagement or public input is necessary? Is that if there's a development and ACCs are charged, that goes into like a reserve, and then council at the time would say, we want to use this to expand something. At that point, does it then go to community input?
No, your worship, when you do your bylaw, the draft bylaw, that goes out for community input. Or any other third party that you want to, so you're looking at it before you adopt it.
And that's where that public involvement comes.
Correct,
Okay.
and any third party that you wish to send it off to for their comments.
Okay, thank you, and that list of 8 original ones that were then went through that screening and got it down to 3. Can we combine ACC funds with RMI funds?
No, your worship, not that I'm aware of it. You
Okay.
can do that, it has to be a standalone project.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I struggle with this whole concept, and I understand the formula used to come up with your answers at the numbers at the end. It's one based on the housing needs strategy or assessment, which is a formula that UBC developed that we had to apply as a village that drives the increase of population by 2041, if I recall correctly. So that seems a little bit artificial. And secondly, I note that the budgets for those projects seemed not budgets I've ever seen before. $8+ million for a civic campus project. There's got to be a stack of assumptions behind that number. And all those numbers go to inform the 41%. Well, the 41% falls out of the increase of population, which is somewhat academic and artificial, driven by that formula. So it leaves me kind of wondering, yeah, you wind up with numbers, but it's difficult to rely on them. At least in my mind, I'm having trouble relying on them as some sort of accurate measure of what would the impact be for the village. So makes it very difficult. Do you know if the District of Kent or Hope or Chilliwack have ACC cost share? I know you gave some examples for comparison. Do we know if those communities do that as well?
I believe, yeah, we looked at Kent and Hope.
Yeah.
But we didn't.
You didn't include.
Didn't know what they're actually charging.
Right. Okay. That might be useful information, because if someone is considering building, I mean, our immediate competitors for housing are probably District of Kent, Hope, maybe Chilliwack. And this is all adding somehow to the bottom line of development. So tell me when this bill, this ACC, would be charged. Is it someone buys a property in town, seeks a development permit to, I don't know, renovate a house or rebuild a house, take one down, put it on new, and all of a sudden this ACC charge comes in at that point for any construction in town?
It comes in, it's two choices.
Yeah.
You have it at the subdivision stage, when the lot is created,
Okay.
or you have it at the building permit stage. So you can make it a condition of approval for the approving officer, can say that the ACC charges, like they do right now for the DCC charges, have to be paid in full.
I think to clarify,
Yeah.
so like if there's a vacant lot, it's a single family lot, we're not gonna be applying it to that lot. If there is a subdivision created to split those two lots in half, the second lot would get it imposed against it. Now, if there was a development that was approved by council to be a multi-family development, you could either do it at the time of development permit, or you could do it at the time of building permit. So the easiest thing for the single family dwelling type, say the R1 type developments, is to do it at the time of subdivision. Whereas with multifamily, generally speaking, it's whenever you get a building permit, they're gonna build, say a fourplex, you charge your DCCs and all your charges at that time for that building. Same thing for an apartment and all.
I'm just, I know the lots down my street that are for sale, and would this apply if someone had a building permit, bought the lot and had a building?
That would not be my vision. I think that
I'm just trying to understand what
subdivision
what we're doing.
created under a different bylaw.
It has to be a new building if you're gonna charge it at the building permit stage. You can't just, because somebody sells the lot, doesn't mean that you add the ACC charge. Well, first off, we're not involved in the real estate transaction. The only time we would get involved is if on that vacant lot that was created by the subdivision, it can either be done at the approving officer level, the subdivision stage, or when I've applied for my building permit to build my single family dwelling or my multi-residential dwelling units. That's when you charge it. And it's only once.
No, I understand it's only once, but I'm just thinking that anyone who requires a building permit, there's a possibility we could have these ACC charges apply to any bill, ride the coattails.
We aren't involved in internal renovations for any building permit. So and they're dealing with the Fraser Valley Regional District on that one alone. We don't get involved in that. If, however, their footprint of their building is, let's say it's 1,200 square feet, and they're taking it to 1,400 square feet, then yes, we get involved in that. But if in the 1,200 square foot dwelling, they're just moving walls, adding rooms, we don't get involved. So we don't charge the ACCs for that, nor do we charge DCCs for that.
Okay, so it sounds like it'd be charged at two different times, and one scenario at the subdivision stage seems fairly clear, but I'm still a little bit unclear about when these get charged. If council approves of this and wants to have it apply at the development permit, building permit, I don't know if those terms are interchangeable in this context. I just really want to be clear when the ACC charges, if there are any, would apply.
If you had the ACC bylaw in place, the only time it could apply when you're doing your subdivision is when it becomes a condition of your PLA.
So let's leave aside the subdivision. It's not a subdivision. Someone buys a vacant lot in town and wants to build a house.
Yeah.
Do the ACCs apply?
Only if they get a building permit.
Well, they'll need a building. I don't know, how can you build a house without a building permit?
If it's from scratch, then yes. But this is what I'm getting at. For a building permit, you also need a building permit based upon the requirements of the Fraser Valley Regional District when you're doing renovations.
Yeah.
We don't get involved in that.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Cossey. I am unclear, and it's difficult to make any kind of decision unless I have absolute clarity when these charges might be applied and in what circumstances.
Okay, if for building permits, it's only when there's something new is being constructed on the lot.
So only with new. So
Only the new.
So in a coach house or ancillary building,
You can only charge it on the property once.
it's never been charged to date because it's brand new.
Yeah, so it depends if they got their building permit. Let's say they got their building permit, they're gonna do a single family dwelling and they're doing the coach house. So you charge it just, that would be 2 units with your ACC, 2 units with your DCC.
There's a house on a lot and someone seeks a permit to build a coach house in the back because it fits the regs. Is it charged on the coach house?
It depends whether or not the main building has been charged or not already, because you can only do it once.
Okay, so until a few months ago, there were no ACCs. So I'm gonna presume this is entirely new and no ACCs, because we haven't passed a bylaw, have been charged on any property in the village. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay,
We haven't charged anything.
So there's no bylaw, there's no ACCs. So again, there's an existing house and someone wants to get a building permit or development permit, whatever the terms are, to build a coach house in the back. Do the ACC charges apply to that?
Yes.
Okay.
And also the DCC charges apply as well. Unless they've been paid for already.
Yeah, well, the general assumption is if there's a lot that has been created under a previous subdivision, that DCC would have been paid for.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
same with the Wash subdivision.
All of
DCCs were all placed, so when you built your house, you didn't have to pay DCCs.
See, to me, I think that if there's a single, and I could be wrong, I mean, I guess there's 2 ways to go about it. I think what Mayor Talon is trying to identify is there's a vacant lot in his subdivision. Someone purchases that lot. We have the ACC bylaw is now in place. Does that person have to pay the ACC rate for a previously established lot, but a new house?
Yes. So because it would be at that time at the building permit stage.
You could, or is there a trigger that
We can look into it, whether or not there's a trigger that exempts
Yeah, so like in the
previously
bylaw,
subdivided.
say, once the subdivision is created, each lot has the DCC and ACC imposed against it, then that's all there is. There's no other, for single family I'm talking.
Yeah. Yep, we can look into whether or not there's an exemption possibility.
Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand when it applies. I need some simple scenarios so I know it does apply, it doesn't apply. And I'll be honest, I'm really wrestling, I'm really struggling with, I understand the purpose of ACCs for growth and to build public amenities, community amenities, and have the new development pay a share of that. I'm just struggling with the numbers, if that's the right balance. And then I look to how the numbers are derived, and there's a formula and a process, but that formula and process are laden with some significant assumptions and some just numbers that came out of a formula from UBC, and we can probably debate for the rest of the afternoon whether that housing needs assessment fits the village well with the 637 new houses to be built. So I've just and I know all these things go to inform the actual number that falls out at the end, which is why I was asking. It'd be nice to know what the District of Kent and Hope and perhaps Chilliwack, what their ACC charges are, if in fact they have them. Yeah, Councillor Schweinmetz, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Mayor Talon. I guess, you know, I look at it as a dad. I always do this. You think of the next generation. This is just going to add $5,100 to my son's buying a multifamily little condo here in town. I think I'm hearing that some municipalities are waiving these to try and direct development where they want it, along high volume streets or where transit corridors are, transit nodes. I'm just wondering if this has a role in that kind of thing. Maybe we ought to be incentivizing more medium and high density residential development where we want it.
Is it possible that the bylaw only applies on certain properties or certain?
Yes, you can target that, or you can target the entire village. That's what I was mentioning earlier. You can just do select areas, or you can do the entire village.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Fatchi.
Your question.
Yeah.
In doing this in certain areas, then if council went that route, you would have to change the zoning, would we not? To say this zoning, say R1 can have the ACCs, but R2s cannot. Is that what you're making reference to?
Yeah, you can set it up that way, but it'd be more on the checklist when you get the application that the council has ignored or said that we don't want it here, but we want it here.
Yeah.
But yeah, we would just need the checklist in place.
Councillor Vital.
Thank you. So I'm just looking for some clarity. We've been discussing about single lots as opposed to someone who developer comes in and wants to do a development, split the lot in half or whatever. So I would really appreciate, as Mayor Talon said, if we have the ability to say single family lots, not not being applied for subdivided. Somebody comes in, purchases an R1 zone lot and wanting to build a single family home. I'm not so sure we would want to include ACCs in that situation. I see ACCs more for multi-unit residential buildings or even commercial buildings. So I'd really appreciate a little bit of clarity on that. Mr. Cossey, thank you.
We would need to go back then, Your Worship, and just focus those formulas on just the multifamily dwellings and the commercial units. It would all change everything.
All right, thank you.
The other thing too is the reason I'm saying that we got to look to see if we can do the exemption that we were just talking about for the subdivision is you're allowed to exempt various affordable housing and other things under the legislation. So we need to now go back and look to see if we can do that exemption from the ACC issue.
Good. Okay.
Councillor Fatchi.
Yeah, it's just going back to through Your Worship. I think that's how you started this whole process, that the ACC is more or less taking place of what used to be called the
community amenity
Fine,
contribution.
is that correct? And
That's
that was
correct.
only done, like Councillor Viola says, for commercial, correct?
No, it was done for residential as
Or
well.
was it? I thought it was
Yes.
commercial. Okay, okay.
Okay.
Where do we go from here?
Go ahead, Councilman.
Thanks, Mayor Tony. I have to admit, I can see the healthcare. I'm not crazy about the three things that we've chosen, to tell the truth. I'm not sure why we would ever build a daycare, as an example. There's plenty of private daycares in the community. I know that came up, but it came up in the context of a much larger list. It got whittled down to daycare. Same with the Civic Center hub. That's a, we don't know the cost of that or if it's ever gonna happen, really. Anyways, just wish the list could be more expansive.
Well,
Go
I think
ahead,
that, I think the list that, I had Amanda share, what was approved by council previous to this meeting. And if council wants, I can expand on what those topics were, if they'd wish. So the first one was safety and emergency services. And under that was new or expanded fire hall and or apparatus equipment and street lighting and crosswalks. B was parks, recreation, and trails, which included parks, land acquisition for parks, and off-leash dog park, a permanent model, and a playing field and trail building. And under C was community facilities and public spaces, which could include a library, public spaces, community space, civic center, and the overflow parking lot, village office and chambers, existing village office renovations and lease. Under D was housing, which included rental building. E was health and social well-being, which is incentive for healthcare, daycare, building facility. Again, you can see how that's been whittled down to what the last three are. And then the last one was environment and urban forest, which includes the tree canopy, which mentioned. Now, this is just like Ken had said, this is just, we are taking it right back to the very beginning. This is, we've got this council or the next council has an opportunity to refocus, change. This is just what the process has gotten to us right now. If the wish is to not set the sights on a daycare, which I think would be included in a new school anyways. And if you're not wanting to focus on a center hub or civic center, we can reprioritize. It's up to council whether how they want to establish this. The one challenge is that having these numbers, trying to set basically a baseline so we can have justification behind what we're charging, is what this process has brought us to. Now, obviously, if we refocus and look at something different, those numbers change. Another thought too is, or something to keep in mind, is that with the growth that we're seeing here, especially over the last 3 or 4 years, it's not growing at a very quick rate. And we're looking at asking, it looks like on average, $5,000 per lot or per unit or whatever. That's going to take an awful long time to establish that full $3 or $5 million we're trying to target. So this model is more beneficial in larger communities where we see lots of growth, because we can establish that, we can put funds into a recreation center, or we can put funds into a healthcare center or daycare, or these different priorities that the community and or council might have. So I think that's where our challenge is. Like, it's up to council whether they want to impose this or not, but it's going to take a very long time to accumulate those funds to provide that, or accumulate the funds to put towards one of those capital projects.
Mayor Talon, if I may, that helps with Tyson for sure. Like, so you had categories A to D or E, which was much more palatable to me than these three single ones. And I guess I'm feeling that if we vote on this today, we're just gonna, in 4 years, we're gonna have just these three categories.
I don't think there's any vote.
I like your broader statement.
Just for information. And one thing too is that it's better to narrow it down to one or two or three priorities, because if you've got 7 or 8 and you're trying to put funds in different locations, that's gonna take even longer.
And we can't have just one single ACC fund. And so 4 years, if there's a plan, so so then 4 years is.
As we said earlier, we started off in December of last year with that listing that Tyson, your CAO, went through, and we whittled it down to those 3, because as we said, there's ones that have to be attributed directly to growth as part of the criteria, and there's other agencies or other mechanisms to pay for, like you have your DAI bylaw, which require development approval information bylaw, which the developer has to pay for when we ask them to do this particular study or whatever it may be. But having said that, on the amendment issue, this just starts it off. No bylaw is done in stone forever. If you down the road 2 or 3 years, whatever, when we go through this process again to amend the bylaw. If you find out that X doesn't work for you, but you want to do A, B, and C, then that's fine. You have that process. You just have to go through this process to amend that bylaw.
Just to clarify, so we can redirect funds, like if we have a couple $100,000 in the Civic Center fund, we can redirect that to something
It goes
else?
to the ACC reserve fund. So whatever policies or procedures you have, in that case, will govern it.
Yeah.
Okay, so it gives us more flexibility for the priorities of the time. Okay.
And just please also remember, this is not a mandatory requirement. This is a discretionary power. You don't have to do it right now. Don't ever have to do it, period. Because it's a may in the legislation.
Yes, Councilor Vinyl.
Thank you, Mayor Talon, through you to Mr. Cossey. What are you looking to get from council then today? Anything? Or is it just you wanted to provide that update on where?
At this time, your worship, just providing an update, and then it was, if council wanted to proceed, that's fine. If they don't want to proceed, that's fine as well too. It was just more sharing of the information, because as I said, the last time we talked about it at the council meeting, I felt there was still some confusion.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I think there still might be.
I think there still is.
I think some of the confusion has been clarified, at least for me, but it still leaves the larger question of balancing these growth costs among, the village as a whole and the growth, new construction and more people moving to town. And I'm still wrestling with that balance, and I'm not sure this is it based on all the assumptions that have gone into it. If the civic campus hub is half that much, then everything falls by essentially 50% on the building costs too. So there's a lot of assumptions built in here to get to those numbers that were in the presentation. And it seems a little bit contrived actually to me, the whole thing to get to those figures. So that's why I was more interested in the comparison of what are our neighboring communities doing, because I'm sure we could manufacture almost any number we wanted with the right set of assumptions. Councilor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. I want to make a recommendation that perhaps we put this forward for next council to discuss more in depth, right? We don't know who, what council will be, the makeup of council at that time. And it could be included in a strategic planning session.
Transition.
So transition or whatever. Because this will affect, a year, 5, 10 years down the road. I think we should give the opportunity to new council for them to discuss it in depth. So if you need a motion for that, or
What would it be? Something to table this until the new year, effectively, I guess, something like
Advertise
that.
it during the strategic session with the new council.
With the new council, yeah,
Motion of that effect?
yeah, that works,
Okay.
okay.
Any discussion on that motion? I'll call the vote. All in favor of that motion? I think giving this a little bit of time will be helpful. Thank you, Councillor Biden. Okay, takes us to what looks like the third item in 5, but it's number B if you're looking at it. And this is BC timber sales, and I think there's 2 resolutions when I flip the page. Who do I look to? Do we need a motion to raise this? Tell me how we should proceed here. Some suggestions, corporate officer.
Thank you, yeah, it was referred to the committee as a whole for discussion, I don't think that there's been any subsequent motion, so council can kind of discuss these issues here, the risks associated with water quality A through D there, and then consider whether to engage neighboring communities.
We'll move forward to a discussion, see where it goes, and see what kind of resolutions, what kind of motions might come out of this. Councilor
I'm not sure where to start. I knew this would be, it could potentially be a difficult conversation. And I think it'd be hard to focus us because we have so many concerns about this, but the reality is I think we'll all recognize the risk of wildfires in our community. We see it happening around the province. Obviously, we're in a much different environment here with the rainforest, bigger trees, and different biozone, if you will. So I think our risk is lower, but with climate change and with the increased risk associated to logging, this is a concern. This is why we initially brought this up. We are, unfortunately, we are a postal stamp sized village in the middle of a big forest, and we have no jurisdiction over this, over the activities that are happening, but I think we ought to find a way to have some input. Other communities such as Hope, such as Coquitlam, such as Mission, have this tree farm license park idea where the communities have more say and input as to the logging activities around them, and they benefit quite a bit more. And I think as council, I'd like to pursue something like that. And at the same time, letting our neighbors and friends who surround us know that this is a major priority and a major concern for us, and hoping that in collaboration with them, we can come up with a better solution. I think the BC timber sales, the whole ministry of at the provincial level, the forestry ministry they're going through a lot of change. They're getting a lot of pressure on them. It's a declining industry. Mills are closing. People are wondering if what is the benefit to the activities, considering the cost of fighting fires. So I'm not sure where we go with this discussion. I'm open to suggestions, but we are, and this is no comment on staff at all, but it's telling that we just aren't prepared and ready to have these conversations, but they're very, very important, I think, for the future.
Corporate officer, do we have meetings scheduled with the appropriate ministers at the UBCM conference where we can raise these matters?
We've requested, but we haven't received confirmation. Yeah.
So either we'll get a chance to let the minister know directly, or I presume their senior officials. I have no issues bringing that to the province's attention. I think we'll take the opportunity to press them in person at the UBCM conference, and hopefully we get a meeting with the minister of, with guests, maybe forestry and maybe lands, maybe both, and follow up with a written follow-up. And on the second point, I think we should probably add this to the next C2C agenda and be prepared to speak to it and see what kind of reaction we get from our neighbors at that forum. We're doing this, and take that opportunity.
Yeah.
And gauge their reaction, and if there's an opportunity to work together on these things, then we should probably avail ourselves of that, because I think if our interests do align, then we have the same messages, might land a little firmer with the potential words.
It would.
I'm still just sort of amazed that the village's views aren't sought on the A to D items, even the aesthetic qualities of logging. Someone does these few polygons at an administrative level without the village's input or consent. I would like to see the village have an approval role over forestry activities that can be viewed or seen from the village, particularly the waterfront. That's part of the charm and appeal for people when they look down the lake, seeing a more natural, pristine environment. My view.
If I may.
Yeah.
The other, I mentioned wildfires, but flooding as well. We're seeing a lot more water come off areas of the mountain where there's been clear cuts.
Mm-hmm.
When they clear cut, they change the hydrology, they change the way water runs off the land. And then post logging, they go in and they plant usually a single species softwood, and it's no longer a mixed forest. So everything has changed. And again, we need to find a way to have more input, and maybe we need to direct staff to find out what would it entail to have a community forest idea, or maybe this is an idea to bring the C2C let's together collaborate on a community forest plan, much like Hope and Coquitlam and Mission have, so that we have more input and more benefit.
I'm not familiar what a community forest is, what it might do, or what its purpose is. So I think having some knowledge of that would be great.
Okay.
I don't know what it is, what it means. I know they exist, but I'm not sure what the features of them.
So would it be helpful that, these are all, we're not experts. Do we hire an expert to tell us? We hire consultants all the time for wastewater treatment plants and other things. Should we hire someone in the know that can help us with this?
Perhaps
to give us background information.
Before we spend money, maybe staff are able to summarize, give a little bit of time, give us a report back on what a community forest is and what it's not. I don't know. Does anyone know that can we fill that blank in today?
Well, to start, it's usually within your boundaries, the municipal boundaries. So I think our challenge is that if it were, like you say, a postage stamp inside of a whole region that has lots of crown land. Now, maybe there's an opportunity to seek an agreement with the province outside the boundaries, but I can't see that being a thing. I know the community forests have Chilliwack, that's within the boundaries.
Yeah, we would need to collaborate with our neighbors.
Yeah.
So the areas, First
essentially,
Nations.
Yeah, we can still do the research if staff wish, but I don't know that there's an actual benefit in the village, because, for instance, the sector right now, with respect to because it's designated as a park area, we have area over here on the bluff that's all privately owned. So there's might be some pockets, I'm not sure, but when we're looking at communities, like a community forest, generally speaking, it's a larger area within.
I'd like to see some research done on that.
So Councillor Jackson first, and I'll get back.
Just a comment, I guess it would be 207, we went to the largest forest, Mayor Fascio at the time. They assured us in a couple of years' time, they told us they were finished on the east side, done. There we are 15 years later, coming into Harrison last week, so it's 3 logging trucks going on.
Yeah.
So, they speak with forked tongue. And they're just going to do what they're going to do. And the forest industry, unfortunately, is dying. It may be a natural thing that happens, but go ahead and try all you want. And I wish you all luck.
Yeah. All right, council, I guess, council Patrick, then I'll come back to you. Patrick.
Good luck, good luck, good luck. 216, we sat in Vancouver with the Premier of the Day, First Nations, MLAs, forestry people, quite a big group from Kent and us were there as well. And we went basically, obviously, through the flooding situation. And that's why I always come up with a story that unless a certain amount of sediment is removed from the Fraser River, flooding is going to continue because the water keeps coming up because of the sediment. They don't allow the sediment to be removed. The quality of the Harrison Lake, well, I think the quality, I believe now that we don't have Rivtow and all the logging companies that used to drag all their wood down there. I think when you look at that lake, it looks pristine to me personally, and nobody has suffered any risks through drinking the water, to my knowledge. So now the aesthetic views have been addressed in the past, and it worked with Echo Island, so they cut the backside of it. Instead of the front side, front facing like the village. So they did cut because that island belongs to Stahelis, so they have the logging rights for that. And also the part of the Hemlock Valley area and all that logging area, that was all part of the big 60-year plan to do with the billionaire from Vancouver. And Stahelis do have a chunk of that logging as well as part of the deal, I believe. So that's Barasan, that was the name of the gentleman. So yeah, we've gone through this, like Mr. Councillor Jackson has said, but you know, like Councillor Vidal says, sometimes you just have to keep lobbying and lobbying and lobbying, and maybe in the end somebody will listen and do something. You know, a lot of things has worked for Harrison over the years by lobbying. Don't get me wrong, it's worked, but it means continuous lobbying, you know. So, and also somewhere on the shelves around here, there was a plan of the whole of the village regarding fire risks. You know, all around, there is a plan there. What the potentials could be for fire risks. So somewhere on the shelves there, that plan is there. And I think it was backed up by the fire department at the time. So we had it done. So there is a, like I said, Mark, we have so many shelves in this village that they're collapsing because you have to do these plans, and then hopefully you have to hope that you're going to get the funding to actually do the job.
Which plan are you talking about?
There was a plan that was done by, it was sanctioned by the fire department as well and the council. They did the fire hazards for the whole of the village. And it was done.
Yeah, we did that a couple years ago.
This was before you gentlemen came on board.
Oh.
Yeah, there was an initial one and then the second one.
Yeah.
We got Blackwell to do one
Yeah.
a couple years ago.
Yeah. But no, I think we're gonna another meeting at UBCM, hopefully with the minister, and then thrash these things out again.
Yeah.
And let the council, whoever's going to be on there in 8 weeks' time, decide which direction they're going to go.
Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Mayor Talon, and I'll put, I think involving our Let's Not C2C forum could prove beneficial. So with that, I'll put a motion forward that we request this be put on the agenda for the next Let's Not C2C forum.
Good.
Any discussion on that motion?
No.
Councillor
Yeah,
Dunn?
thanks. I like that idea. And I would emphasize that, you know, we're not trying to shut them down. We're not anti-logging, but changing the practices to be more sustainable, more selective, and more sensitive to our safety concerns. I think that would be the big thing. I think if we go down there and try to shut them down, then you know, that's not going to go anywhere, but work with them to be more selective and sustainable. So I like that idea and I support that.
Any other comments? I'll call the vote on the motion. All in favor? And stay tuned for a C2C meeting. The next one.
Mayor Talon?
Yes.
You know, and also, you know, we should talk about things that we can control. We have really, unfortunately, no control over what's going on outside of our boundaries, to CAO's point. But I'm to understand that, you know, if we redouble our efforts on the wild or on the fire smart activities, we had a great report a couple of years ago with great tasks to be done, and I think this municipality has done most of them. But I wonder if sometimes residents haven't really taken advantage of some of the resources that we have. We've got Christy out there. We've got others that can help with wildfire assessments on their properties. We've seen all the videos in Summerland or down in the States where if your house has gutters full of leaves and pine needles, and if you've got cedar hedges behind you and a fire is approaching, your house is probably going to go up in fires. So other communities have fire smart in their own community, and we're starting to do that, but I think some residents out there need to do a better job as well.
There's always room, opportunities to increase that, and I know our emergency preparedness handbook has the links to fire smarting, and all those practices and other guides are available. Councillor Patrick.
And we have the coordinator. You only got to give them a call, you know, come round.
Yeah, come around.
Give you a kit. Oh, we've got it. Give you a kit and assess them. But that's up to with all due respect, Councillor Swan, that's up to the individual homeowner.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
We're not here to hold their hands. We're here to help them.
Trying to make that point.
And we've done a wonderful job of fire smart. I think an outstanding job of making people aware of, and when this booklet is put together, which will be that's what people, I think some people are waiting. I think people are more concerned in respect to, God forbid, if there's an emergency, who's going to look after me? Who's going to look after the handicapped person? Which way do we go out? So that's going to be in there. You know, I think they're more concerned about that than which they should be, removing the leaves from the eaves troughs or wherever they're supposed to, whatever they're supposed to do. We have the system there. Take advantage of it. If you don't, like I mentioned about the primary care centre, every Friday our staff sit there for 4 hours. You'd be lucky if you get 3 people coming. So it's there for people we're giving them the ability to go and attend these things or procure these things. It's the same with the fire department at the last open house. I've got one, selling the spray kits for your homes. Well, you go around the village, there's not many. I have to spray hoses on their roofs.
Yeah,
that's part of the fire smart situation.
Yeah.
So I think overall, I think it's up to the individual homeowner to take care of their premises to the best of their abilities, and the rest taken care by our emergency services and all the people we've got involved to protect our village. That's my beef anyway.
All right, points well taken.
Mayor Town, also.
Councillor Vital and then Councillor Swinebens, and then hopefully we can get to item 6 on our agenda.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Since I have been on council, and since that opportunity for Fire Smart funding has come available, you know, our council and our staff have certainly taken advantage of that. There's always more that can be done on a village level. But that again is all dependent on funding. And we don't know at this point if or how much of Fire Smart funding is going to be available through the province. And, you know, I'm not going to list all the things that us as a village and staff have been able to accomplish using Fire Smart funding, because we know it, right? So with that, through you, Mayor Talon, to Christy, where have we reapplied for Fire Smart funding for next year, or where are we with that? Or Tyson, if you can answer that, or?
Certainly pass it on.
Thanks, Mayor Tom, through you to Councillor Vital. Currently, there is not an intake that we would be eligible for. I believe they're still kind of revamping what it's gonna look like. Our current funding ran from May 22nd of this year, and it'll wrap up May 21st, 2027. I believe those are the dates. And then they were sort of, they've made some changes, and now there is, I'm just looking really quick in case it's changed, but there are no current open applications that I can tell. But I imagine that will be looked at for their next budget. And the talk was that they would be still having the program, but sort of shifting maybe some of the cost allotments and things like that, now that so many communities had sort of got a good start on the program. But I'm not sure at this time yet.
Okay, we'll wait. I sometimes, think that, our residents are wonderful with coming through with ideas and suggestions on, any number of topics. And we, as a council, would love to implement a lot of them. But I hope our residents understand that that is all contingent on funding, either from the province or for the federal government. The only other alternative we have as a council would be to increase taxes in order to provide things that the residents have suggested. And I don't want to discourage them at all from coming forward with suggestions, but keeping in mind that we are a small community and that we rely heavily on grant funding from both the provincial and the federal level. And with that, I'll be quiet. Thank you.
Corporate officer, you a comment?
Thank you, Mayor Callan. I just wanted to comment. This Fire Smart funding is one of 3 special resolutions for UBCM 2026. Yes. So there are many communities who've put forward resolutions relating to Fire Smart funding and the need for some predictable funding models in order to continue with the Fire Smart.
Thank you, Corporate Officer. Councillor Simons.
Thanks, Mayor Town. Yeah, kind of off topic, but it's related to item 1A there, risk associated with wildfires. And I was at dinner last weekend with a bunch of Harrisonites, reasonable Harrisonites who do pay attention to these things. And they asked me blankly, because Summerland had just been evacuated within hours, 20,000 people, and they kind of asked me, well, what is the plan? What do you think we'd have a chance to evacuate within a couple of hours? And I honestly couldn't really answer. And I know that I reached out to staff and they gave me some information, and I think some of that information will be really helpful for the residents to know as well. I know that our staff has done a lot of training internally, and I think that's fantastic. I know that about a year ago, we had sort of a practice run at the EOC, and we learned a lot there. And I'd really like to see us to try that again and to keep up those efforts and to keep informing residents about those sorts of things. So I'm hoping we can do another EO exercise soon and keep learning and keep improving our emergency preparedness. Thank you.
May we vote on the motion, Mayor Talon?
Yes. The motion was the C2C.
Yeah, to refer the
Yeah.
requested up here.
Thank you for reminding me about that.
Mayor Talon, I had a comment. I think Tyson wanted to.
It was just merely to state that all of our EOC training and or mock activations are done through with partnership through Christy and our emergency management coordinator. So we are looking to, after we get through the local election, we'll revisit staff, and we're continuously upgrading, of course, through staff training, but we'll do a mock activation soon. But there is one point I did want to make about the Fire Smart activities. It was a key council priority to take advantage or not take advantage, sorry, apply for and hopefully receive the 2 years worth of funding. The village has done, through council's strategic direction, done an excellent job on achieving multiple goals. But where I think we're still hopefully wanting to see is some community input, or sorry, community buy-in. We're seeing people in this community that are extremely critical of staff and council and about the the wildfire situations and lack of preparedness and all these things, but yet they're not worrying about their own backyards. And that's where we need to really focus, is that we do have to look at taking some level of responsibility for ourselves, having the grab and go bags, making sure that our properties are fire smarted, make sure we're ready to go. Communicate with your neighbors, make sure that you have plans in place for your immediate neighborhood, friends, family, everything like that. The fact is that these types of situations, like the one that happened in Summerland, are extremely dynamic. You expect that, a wildfire is gonna at least give you some warning. This one didn't. Councillor Swinebeds did speak to it. We are in a bit of a different climate zone here, but it's never say never, of course. We all have to be prepared. So I'm pretty confident we have some funding left from our Fire Smart funding. If people are wanting assessments done on their property, we can certainly do that. Christy is certified to do that, and we do have some opportunities still available. So if there are people that are concerned and would like to have that assessment completed, please reach out to the village and we'll make sure we get that scheduled. Thank you.
May I also add, thank you, CAO, another very, very valuable tool is the Alertable app.
Absolutely.
And I remember commenting at last council meeting, very easy. And if people are having difficulty on downloading it, I'm sure if they came to the office here, that there would be staff that would be able to help them download it and explain to them how it works. It's an imperative tool. Thank you.
That was pointed out very strongly for the regional districts of Boston Bar. Get the Alertable app. So it gets information.
I'm gonna call the vote because I think we could probably talk about this for much more time. All in favor of the motion to bring this to C and see what the reaction is. Thank you.
If I can comment on what Tyson said.
Sorry. So Councillor Swinebeds,
yeah.
Final comment on
Very well
emergency
said.
operations.
No, very well said, Tyson. I think you're spot on. I did some research on fire smarting. Apparently Logan Lake passed a bylaw such that if your property is grossly not fire smart, you get a fine. They passed a bylaw for this. And I think Logan Lake is the first wild smart community in BC. And so maybe we need to have more drastic measures. If we're not getting more uptake from residents who aren't paying attention to wild smarting, maybe we need to think about a future bylaw. That's all. Thank you, Tyson.
Okay. 2027 strategic planning meeting.
I'm gonna look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Faccio. Any discussion on adjourning? We can take this conversation and I think talk about it all week with our friends and neighbors. All in favor of adjourning? We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Staff did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you very much.